doesn't come home. Good night and welcome to the Living Well Show, where we have holistic conversations that inspire healing, hope, and transformation with your host, Dr. Albert and Shanique Tompkins. I am Shanique Tompkins and I welcome you.
Good night. I am Dr. Albert.
We are so excited to be here on tonight. Today is the first Monday of April, and we know that it is tax season, especially in the US. And so we wanted to talk about what to do with these refunds. You know, year after year, we see the ads for the TVs and everything that lures your attention, but we want to be fiscally responsible. You know, the older we get, we have to start thinking about our future and how to properly plan for it. So tonight, we have an expert in the industry who is going to help us know what to do with these tax refunds, how to prepare for our lives with our children, our retirement, and even after our demise. So, Doc, will you go ahead and introduce our guest?
I sure will. And tonight we're going to talk about concepts of building and maintaining wealth. So important. So tonight we have Jayson Ambrose, the son of Jeffrey and Nancy Ambrose. He is a licensed financial professional that educates families on money concepts and strategies throughout the entire United States of America and Canada. Jayson and his wife, Kaya, built their financial firm on the platform of No Family Left Behind. Their primary focus is to empower, coach, lead, and develop people to become financially free with financial education, enabling those individuals to create generational wealth. That's what we need. Generational wealth. Not just me and my four, but those after us, right? And in 2022, listen to this. Their goal is to personally help 300 families implement financial strategies in order to attain tangible financial goals for their future. So good night. Welcome, Mr. Jayson. Welcome to the Living Well Show. Please go ahead and greet the people, please.
All right. Can you hear me? Everything?
Yes.
Hi, perfect. So, hey, it's definitely a pleasure being on here today. Like they said, my name is Jayson Ambrose. I'm originally from Nassau, Bahamas. I'm really excited to have an open dialogue around the conversation of money and generational wealth and everything like that. My number one goal for tonight is to be as honest and transparent as possible and connect the dots. Because I know I'm pretty sure for the audience that is on, a lot of us, we work hard. And we know when that tax refund come, like she said, the TV ads and everything be popping up. But the question is, how can I then take that money to let it work for itself? So in the future, my future self can be really happy. And most importantly, like our brother Thumpkins says, imagine, the generations after you. So, my wife and I, we have built up our firm. Starting out in Nashville, relocated to New York at the moment, and we're really excited for that. We are already active in about 25 states, and the goal is to get in all 50 within the next 12 months. So that's a quick recap of who I am and what I do, and I'm just really excited for what questions are about to come out of the bag today.
All right, well, excited to have you, sir. And let's just get started, jump right in it. Let's go to the beginning. How did you get into the financial coaching industry?
Okay, so really great question. So the biggest thing for me is that I've watched my parents work hard all of my life. Father, auto electrician, mother did party and rental supplies. But what I did realize is in 2008, when the market had crashed. Now it crashed in the United States, but the rippling effect kind of hit the Bahamas like on the back end of things. Now, typically, I would say what I learned is, a lot of times we make a lot of money and we spend a lot of money. We don't really talk about saving money. So I've seen two of the people who I respect the most, who I feel like outworks everyone, and have fallen into hardship, not because they weren't doing things that they were supposed to do, because we were well taken care of. It's just that sometimes if certain conversations don't happen within the family, you see the rippling effect of it. So if you don't save, economy slow down, boom, hardships hit. Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is I always had this mindset of how can I put myself in a position so I can empower and educate people. And when I do, I think about sitting down in front of my parents. You get what I'm saying? So it's like anytime when I talk to someone, it's like I'm talking to my family, I'm talking to my parents, because I wish these conversations had happened prior to 2008. So, that's how I got into the industry. And it's just like everything worked in God's favor, that my wife wanted to be in business in this industry as well. And it was like everything was just meant to be. So yes, awesome. That's the root story of how I got into the industry.
Awesome.
Love it.
You started out with your story talking about we don't often, in our communities at least, have conversations about money around the table. And then it almost puts our children at a disadvantage because now they're out there on their own and we tell them to work hard and save your money, but we never really nurtured from the ground up. How would you advise those families? What would you say to encourage them to begin having those conversations around the table earlier?
To be honest, it's just a matter of having a conversation. That's as easy and as simple. One of the biggest things that we were taught is, don't talk about money. Some people get offended when you want to talk about money. But the reality is, if you don't talk about it, it's like going to work, right? If you get hired for a role and they don't ever train you on how to do that role, how do they expect you to execute it?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of like an empty promise. Yeah. Like I'm setting you up to fail. So I feel like it really just starts from breaking down that narrative of not talking about money. And it could be something simple as, hey, save 10% of your income. Simple as that. Or, hey, if you have $10, don't spend the $10. Save $1 or $2.
Yeah.
Because eventually that $1 or $2 is going to turn into 200 to 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000. But once you build a muscle, it starts off with the conversation and it starts within the household practice. I mean, that's the best advice. There are books out there that people can properly educate themselves. We can't be so busy working that we're not educating ourselves about money. Because no matter what industry you in, you have to deal with money. It isn't everything, but it's kind of up there with oxygen. So, so we got to make sure that conversation happens. Like it just has to happen. There's no special answer for it. It just has to happen. And then we realize, when we be in the field, we talk to people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even in their 70s. And it's like, hey, if I had known this when I was in my 20s, I would have. So what that is telling me is their parents didn't have this conversation with them.
Right. It's true. And, usually in our communities, we don't talk about things. How much is the mortgage? What is a mortgage? How much do you make, mom and dad? But in other communities, it's known. Like Steve Jobs' kids, they knew how much he made because it's in the Fortune 500 posted every year. I mean, there's no secret around money, and that becoming comfortable with those conversations helps us to move into what we're going to move into now and talk about planning for life events in the future. So my first question is, what advice would you give for families who are starting out with young children on how to plan for their college?
Okay. So when it comes to planning for college, there are different vehicles that are out there. But keeping it pretty high level, there's a program, what we call the $1 Million Baby Strategy, right? So to reference a book, so I'm going to reference books as I go through this.
That's perfect.
What would the Rockefellers do, right?
Okay.
So what would the Rockefellers do? They use a strategy that is similar to $1 Million Baby Strategy, where from the baby is 14 days old.
What?
14 days. The
14
baby
days.
14 days old.
Interesting.
That they go ahead and they put as much coverage. So when I say coverage, life insurance coverage, right?
Yeah.
But with that, the type of program that they set that kid up with is that they could accumulate cash value in it. So by the time as they reach of age, whether it's for college, whether it's for anything like that, they can have a nest egg of money that they can access. And there's a lot of different technical stuff behind it as well, that the Retirement Miracle, that's another book, The Retirement Miracle, that kind of breaks it down. But I would say the biggest thing is to figure out, okay, you have traditional programs like a 529 that if you set up a program like that for your kid have to go to college. Like, as far as like, if you don't use it for anything else, you have to pay taxes on it essentially.
Right.
But like things like the $1 million baby strategy is a lot more flexible. Every kid will not go to college.
Right.
And I think that's a harsh reality we need to realize.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
You have different gifts. That's fine. Right.
Exactly. Every child will not go. So the cool thing with the $1 million baby strategy, it helps that family to generate this nest egg. But if their child decides not to go to college, right, they can go ahead and use this money to get a down payment on a home, start a business. It's more flexible in nature. So the biggest thing is, a lot of people know about the 529 plans. So my challenge for people who are looking to make sure that their kids are taken care of is to look at the other vehicles out there, so that even if you have that program, you can go ahead and let this universal one kind of like help out as well. Because the reality is, like I say, my number one thing what I've learned is every child will not go to college.
Yes.
Right.
You want to have the best of both worlds. But I know most times we talk about the $1 million baby strategy because, like I said, what would the Rockefellers do? That book breaks it down to a genius from 14 days old.
Wow.
They set that program up and put as much money as possible in it to make sure that that child is taken care of and become their own bank as they get older.
Wow.
Now you said something powerful. Become their own banks as they get older. That's a profound statement. Because now you have your own system to depend upon. You're not dependent upon the economic system on the outside.
Exactly.
That's life changing.
Exactly. You know, imagine how many of us were in college. What is it like to get that first car? You know, think about not even student. We talk about student loan debt, but it's like, what about the predatory loans?
Right. Credit card.
Loans, and you have all of those credit card. It's like all of those things can be avoided. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The proper planning.
Yeah. Wow.
Right, exactly. Well,
I can lay it heavy. Y'all giving me this opportunity to speak. I can speak.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the kind of go back. So, okay, you talked about college. You should insurance. So, let's say a young family, 20s, have children. What kind of insurance do they get?
So again, it boils down to educating. So, you know, you have your typical term policies.
Okay.
Your term policies have a certain amount of time. If you get a 20-year, it's good for 20 years, and then it would, increase of cost. But there are different types of terms where, everything upgrades. I don't know what type of phones you guys have, but I have an iPhone.
Right.
Where nobody is still using the iPhone 1. You get what I'm saying? Everything upgrades.
And it works. And it could work.
It could work. But in today's time, can you use it as a supercomputer like we be using on phones now?
Right.
So the cool thing is, term policies now have something called living benefits. I can only speak for the companies we represent, where if someone suffered from a heart attack, stroke, something chronic or critical, they could pull down from the death benefit while they are alive. So it's kind of like a true life insurance. You don't have to die for it to pay out.
Yeah.
So, and then you have a permanent policy. Again, permanent policy, a lot of people know about the older versions of it, but again, everything evolves. Permanent policies allows you to accumulate some cash in it. And if you know how to use it correctly, you could have some tax advantages on it. So for a young family, my number one goal and the culture what we have with our firm is to educate first. I'm going to educate them on what a term does. I'm going to educate them on what a permanent policy does, because especially if they're younger, they're probably the healthiest they're going to ever be. So I show them, how can you wrap around a protection around your whole family where you can grow some money with some tax advantages and also protect your family at the same time, because medical bills is what get us like in the most debt, right?
Wow.
So imagine having the living benefits that if something happens, instead of you breaking into your permanent policy, you can touch into that living benefit. So your permanent policy is like your iPhone, and your term with living benefits is like the case on it. So I would educate them in that way to get that full wraparound coverage. You can have like the traditional investments and everything as well, because we advocate for that as well. But I think the missing pieces to a lot of people is that insurance piece and how it can really be used to obviously push them to the next level. So I would educate them on that. And once it makes sense to them, just show them how they could get their family $1 million baby strategy, all of that good stuff. So that's what I would do. Educate them on a term versus permanent and the perks of everything based off of their budget.
Okay. And so that covers when you're young. What I hear you saying is that's the best time to start looking at some of those term policies. Now, what would you say to those who may be in their 50s, looking at retirement in another 10 years? They haven't planned fiscally for this point in life, but now they are looking at what is to come. How would you guide them on maybe some options that they have?
Perfect. So I have a theory that one of my great mentors taught me. Says 2 times to plant a tree, 20 years ago and today. So for those people, I just, again, I educate them. You know, most people know about 401ks, IRAs, TSPs, those traditional programs within the United States. I just educate them on how they could properly protect it. Because typically what most people don't know, those programs are up and down in the market, right? But here's the question. If it's up and down in the market, that means if the market crashes, you lose money. When it's time for you to retire, are you okay with gambling that you may lose money after you decided to sit on the sideline and enjoy your life? So for those people, you know, we do a full assessment of their portfolio and say, hey, if that's what you want, listen, that's all you. But I'm going to educate you on ways that you could protect that hard-earned money that you had put aside all of these years. Because for a point in case, one of our brokers, his mother, music school teacher, she had a 403B plan. Unfortunately, she is diagnosed with cancer back in 2001 for the second time. She decided to retire, right? Now, what did America always say? Hey, get a 401k, you got the pension plan, you got the Social Security. That's the 3 main things. Just so you know, pension don't exist like that no more. Then you got 401k is unstable, and then the Social Security is running out in 2036, and you can check the Social Security website for that. But in 2001, what happened? That was 9/11, right? And that was also the dot-com bubble burst. Boom, she lost over 200,000 in her portfolio.
My God.
So with that, is like, that's a problem, because now going through chemotherapy, she have to go back to work. And that is the harsh reality for some people. So our goal is, listen, if your account is bleeding right now, I am the financial doctor. Let me educate you on where the holes are and let me protect it. So now when you do retire, you can know exactly what's going on. So it isn't more so of a specific product. It's more so of even knowing where you are, because most people, you can work for a company for 30 years and they still don't know what they even have. They still have 401ks at jobs that they worked at 20 years ago. So the first approach is to make sure we know everything what they have going on, educate them on everything that they have going on. But my number one goal is to protect their money, to make sure that they can turn on their private pension plan for the rest of their life. Because there are strategies out there called index strategies. Once people really understand how that works versus being in that volatile market all the time that most traditional firms tell you about, it's a different experience and a different level of comfortability. Because most people stay up at night not knowing if they can retire and stay retired. Then we have to convince ourselves, oh, I want to work for the rest of my life. That's a lie. Because if you had a choice to go to the British Virgin Islands or the Bahamas during retirement and go play some golf or go on the beach, you're going to pick that over working at a Walmart, Walgreens, or anything like that. I mean,
that's right, brother.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you raised a good point. So much information, and it's like drinking water out of a fire hydrant, but that's okay.
Wonderful.
We need it,
you can
right?
Listen to the replay.
Exactly. So let's take it to the next step now, right? We talked about in the beginning of building generational wealth, building your legacy. So what kind of tools would you advise persons to start thinking about so they can actually create this generational wealth and leave something behind?
Good. So first thing is, when it comes to like money and building up a portfolio, you have fixed type of growth, which is kind of like stagnant. It's So that's like your savings account, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to have emergency funds saved up. You need to 3 to 6 months. A pandemic that only supposed to last about 3 to 6 months, going on 3 years. All right. Then you got variable. Now, don't get me wrong. Variable for a retirement standpoint, it gets a little tricky. But when you have like stocks and stuff like that, I tell people for play money, you can have that in there because some people like that risk. And that's okay as well. You know, my goal is to educate. And then the third piece is looking into index strategy types of programs. Because with those index strategy types of programs, instead of getting in the volatile market, getting the ups and downs, and then being in a fixed account where the bank's only giving us 0 to 1%, that index strategy would kind of give you like that sweet medium where you can grow your money at a competitive rate, but don't have to worry about any of the market dips. So when it comes to like certain programs, a lot of people know about the stock. A lot of people know about the 401k by default. But to introduce a different concept, I would encourage people to learn more about cash accumulation insurance policies.
Okay.
Because you know the term when they say health is wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? That's a real thing.
Yeah.
Because you have your traditional, like a lot of people like tax advantages, right? And if you go on like the website, you see that Roths, if you make more than a certain amount of money, you can't even qualify for it, even though people like the tax advantages of it. But the cool thing with the cash accumulation insurance policies is kind of like a rich man's Roth, because people who typically make over 250,000 or more a year, they like those vehicles because there isn't no real limit on how much money they can put in it, as far as like how much they could contribute on a yearly basis. Everything is based around what their budgets are. So I would encourage people, a good book is called a Retirement Miracle Book, because you don't want to just grow your money that it could potentially lose. You want to grow a balanced portfolio that, yes, you may have some playtime, but then you have something that is consistently setting yourself up so your future self can have some money for sure. Not for guessing, but for sure. So I would say the cash accumulation insurance policies, I think in our community, we need to look a little bit more into it. I know insurances have a very bad word. It's like not a sexy word in our community, but guess what? GoFundMe also isn't a sexy word. So
That's
well,
true.
that brings to the next topic. So what's your take on wills and living trusts and those kind of options in terms of, preparing the next generation?
So what I've learned is a will is good, but if you really want to make sure that your family is taken care of like all the way through, a trust is like law for a family. So in that book, what would the Rockefellers do? That's all what they did. So right now, like I said, I told you the first part, from day one, they put, like, from a baby is 14 days old, put as much coverage as possible, max funded programs, all that good stuff. But then they also have a trust that when each family member passes away, right, all the way down the line, whenever that may be, the trust is the beneficiary. But here's the deal with that. The trust has, its own bank account or whatever the case may be. So now when I say you functioning as a bank, as a family, that is growing. So you can imagine a generation after, instead of going to a bank, right, to go ahead and borrow money, you go to your family trust. But the trust say if the Thompkins set up a trust and say, hey, you know what, Jayson, I know you're 3 generations down, but in order for you to touch the money, you have to read these 3 books on financial literacy.
Right.
So that's what the trust does. And now you have a fully functional system in flow where you are like intentionally passing down that generational wealth. So the difference between the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers, when you read that book, is that they say the Vanderbilts, they just get a life policy, give it to the beneficiaries, and then they just spend their money however. But the Rockefellers, they use the trust approach along with the life insurance. And now before that, the beneficiary is the trust. So instead of the beneficiary just getting the money and spending it wildly, there are certain guidelines you have to partake in. So in our community, we need to educate ourselves on a trust. A will is a good start, but a trust is the real deal. That's like law. So y'all could be alive for the next 200 years if you set up a proper trust, because as long as those things are in writing,
Yeah.
Like your family lineage would always know who you are because of that.
My God.
Wow. I just wanted to let our audience know that we have a few minutes left, but if you have a question, go ahead and type it in and we'll see if Jayson can answer that for you. So Jayson, you have given us a map. You've talked about what to do as young families, if you're midlife, and then how to set up legacy. I guess if you could create the perfect scenario to have our community reshaped and different, what advice would you give us as a community?
I would say as a community, let's properly insure ourselves.
Mm.
Let us personally develop.
Mm.
I know we know how to work hard, but let's learn how to work together. Let's learn collaborative economics. Let's learn group economics. Every other community is doing it because, you could imagine a lot of the mom and pop shops that we like, or a lot of I worked for a corporation, right? When I was in Tennessee, and I went out to one of the branches. And if you had seen the system that they had in place, is that, okay, the current CEO is about 60s, he ready to retire. They have been grooming their son or daughter 10 years prior. So when that child is ready to step into the role, they may be younger, but you can imagine from age 20 to age 30. By the time as you 30, you have the same knowledge set as your father CEO. So when they leave, you step into the role.
My God.
Let's talk about family businesses.
Yeah.
And that's the main things I would say. We need to personally develop, be stronger with working together, understand the true power of group economics. Let's properly insure ourselves. And that part is really big because we rely only on our jobs, right? Or we allow people to say you're too young to have it, or you don't have any kids. Listen, at the end of the day, you should have 10 times of your annual income as far as like coverage, life insurance, especially if you can get living benefits, because sometimes one death can throw a family off like 4 to 5 generations. So that would be the main 4 things. And they are easy implementations. All it takes is the conversation. If we can help we talk about Will Smith, we talk about Chris Rock, we talk about all of that, the memes and everything. Imagine if we could talk about life insurance, group economics, figuring out how we can go ahead and help each other out, right?
Yeah, it'd be powerful. I was listening to a talk, and the gentleman stated closing the gap within our communities. All it takes is if each family would leave their children, their descendants, $157,000. That would close the gap economically, at least in the U.S. It would give your next generation a leg up, so they're not trying to struggle and find a down payment for their home and find money for their business. They already have a leg up. And when he said it was only $157,000, I thought that's nothing. If we would all, even if just a quarter of us would take and leave that to our children, or put it in a trust from our business that we have now, how much better we would be in 10 to 20 years. And that's just information and sharing the information and sharing the research. And then you see it's not so hard and it's not that big of a leap to do. And if you couldn't do it when you were alive, he said you set it up so that when you leave this earth, that gap can be closed. Yep. So this has been powerful, Jayson. This has been awesome.
Yeah. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and so as we close, how could persons get in contact with you? Let's say they want to get some more information, they want to maybe learn from you. How can they contact you, Jayson?
Okay, so the best way, we are on Facebook and Instagram, all about the Ambroses. So all about and then Ambroses is AMBROSE, and then the S at the end. So all about the Ambroses. We typically put content out there. But outside of the content, we also have like our calendar link for a quick 10-minute chat. So all of the books that I had mentioned today, if you absolutely want a copy of it, I can send it over to you. But go ahead, follow us on All About the Ambroses on our Facebook page as well as our Instagram page. And once you set up a quick 10-minute chat, I'd be able to send over that book to you, and then we go from there.
Wow. Jayson, the financial doctor, which I will now call you. It has been wonderful having you here today. You have unpacked so much information and so much for us to think about. And I love the fact that you jumped straight to it and gave us resources, because if we can read it, we can consume it, we can go over it, and then we know what questions to ask, because sometimes we just don't even know what questions to ask. So thank you for taking time to educate us, giving us things to think about so we know the questions to ask. And I encourage you to contact Jayson. His information is there on the screen, all about the Ambroses. And get your financial house in order. Start thinking about building generational wealth for you, your nieces, your grandchildren, whoever's important in your life. We do hope that you have got something out of today's session that will help you to be better, do better, and live better. And we do invite you to join us again next week here on the Living Well Show. Doc, you got anything to say?
No, thank you, Jayson. I appreciate it. And I hope we actually do what we said tonight so we can improve the next generation.
Yes,
Thank you all.
You have a guy now.
Yes, we do.
We appreciate Dr. Jayson. Bless you and your family. And see you all again right here next week on the Living Well Show. Have a great night.
Have a great night. And remember to share this one. This was a powerful episode.
That's right.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.